back to the podcast this evening. We are going to be talking about the Lateran Palace, Roman Catholicism, and the Roman Empire. Don't worry, it's not going to take all night. We're just going to have a few minutes to talk about this. 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We'll see how this rolls out. And I may drink water in between as I talk because, boy, am I parched today. Of course, I live in the south, so it's pretty hot down here. But not as hot as damnation will be. So thankfully, I have to worry about Tennessee weather, and I won't have to worry about the other. All right, I just rhymed that, and I wasn't even trying to do that. How about that? What's the old saying, poet, and I didn't even know it? When we were kids, we had that. All right, let's try to go through this as Reader Digest as we can. We can go really deep into a lot of different sections, but I want to make it really simplistic and simple and easy to understand as I possibly can. So we talked about the Lateran Palace, right? Or the Palazzo Laterano. Okay, that was my attempt at my Italian. My wife is Italian, so I'm probably going to get in trouble for that one. She's going to say, boy, you didn't get that right. Anyways, it's a historic building in Rome. That's all it is, an historic building in Rome, but with significant religious and political importance. What could it be? What could it be? All right, well, let's talk about the overview. The historical background. What are the origins? What is the origins of the Lateran Palace? Well, the Lateran Palace was originally built on the site of a Roman patrician family. Well, or their villa, I should say, the family's villa, the Laterani, in the early 4th century CE. BC, EE, AD. See, people don't always know when you say CE. Now, obviously, the timing of this is interesting because already in the early 4th century, and we know what's going to happen in the mid to late 4th century with Constantine. Well, like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself. But this palace became associated with the papacy. All right, the false church during the time of Emperor Constantine the Great, who donated the land to the Pope. Interesting how that happened, huh? Just all of a sudden, this family out of nowhere comes up, and there you go. The Lateran Palace became the principal residence of the popes. But only for a brief time, right? Well, from the 4th century to the 14th, I think? 14th, excuse me. Making it the center of the papal court administration. The adjacent Basilica of St. John Lateran was the cathedral church of Rome. And throughout the Middle Ages, the Lateran Palace was the official residence of the popes from the 4th to the 14th century. When the papal court moved to Avignon, France, it remained an important site for all of papal events and all of their official functions. The Lateran councils, we'll get into that afterwards. But remember Avignon, France, too, we had that split and that schism, or I shouldn't say I'm not a Catholic, so there was that schism that happened. But in later developments in the 14th century, the papal residence was then moved to the Vatican. The Lateran Palace underwent a lot of modifications over the centuries, but it remained a key center for the Roman Catholic Church. So, it always stayed the Roman Catholic Church. Didn't change. It stayed with them. Let's briefly talk about the papal significance. Let's begin. We'll talk about the papal residency. For many centuries, the Lateran Palace was the primary residence of the popes, making it a central location for papal administration and decision making. And then, as I briefly mentioned before with the ecumenical councils, the Lateran Palace was the site of several rather significant ecumenical councils, including the Lateran councils, which addressed various theological and ecclesiastical issues in the Roman Catholic Church, which was a lot of it to destroy anyone who didn't agree, and some doctrines that they wanted to change, and some dogmas, like they often do. Now, we'll jump ahead in talking about the Lateran Treaty. This goes further ahead, but I think it's important to mention anyways. In 1929, the Lateran Treaty was signed. Now it's already been the Lateran Palace. It's never changed its name. It's always been Lateran. The Lateran Treaty was signed between the Holy See and the Kingdom of Italy with Benito Mussolini. I don't think I have to go into a lot on Benito Mussolini during World War II. If you don't know who he is, I'm a little shocked by now that you wouldn't know who that is. But I would take the time and look up who he is because he was not a good man. Not even close. A Catholic and a killer. So, anyways, they made that agreement, which established the Vatican City as an independent sovereign state. They answered to themselves. The treaty also addressed various aspects of the relationship between the Catholic Church and Italy. Excuse me. All right, let's talk a little bit about the brief rundown about the early history in Roman emperors, beginning with Constantine the Great. As I mentioned before, donation. He was a donator. The Lateran Palace gained prominence during the reign of the Emperor Constantine the Great. He reigned from 306 to 340. We'll just say that. Constantine, the first Roman emperor to be I would have to say he was the first Roman emperor to be a false convert to Christianity. He donated the Lateran property to the Pope in the early 4th century. Um, Records have it at 313. Remember what I said before. The Lateran Palace was just all of a sudden donated in the early 4th century, so 300s. All of a sudden. And I think that's important to talk about because I'm going to briefly talk about the Lateran family, and it's going to be so brief you won't believe it. This donation included the land and the palace itself, which was actually transformed into the official residence of the Pope. The act symbolized the church's growing importance within, basically, the Roman Empire. Remember that, not an empire, not the Catholic Church or the Church. It was growing importance with the Roman Empire. Unequally yoked there. Well, then again, they're all unequally yoked. At the Basilica of St. John Lateran, alongside the Lateran Palace, Constantine also commissioned the construction of the basilica, which became the Cathedral of Rome. And at that point, probably the most important center of Roman worship. Throughout the medieval period, the Lateran Palace was the official residence of the popes. Although the papal residence then moved to Avignon, France, as I mentioned before, in the early 14th century, during the Avignon papacy, the Lateran Palace remained an important site for papal administration and ceremonies. So they had moved at that point out of there. Today, in the 20th century, I'm sorry, not 20th century, we're in the 21st now. In the 20th century, the Lateran Palace continued to hold historical importance, particularly with the signing of the Lateran Treaty in 1929. Apologize for the coughing. Got a little bit of clear throat. Did some Bible reading today, so. Although the Lateran Palace itself was not directly the focus of the treaty, it remains an emblematic site of the church's long history and enduring influence. The Lateran Palace represents the historical transition of the Roman Empire from paganism to Christianity, or Roman Catholicism, and the establishment of the papacy as a central authority in Rome. It is said to have symbolized the intersection of imperial and ecclesiastical power in early Christian Rome. Again, Roman Catholicism, it's Roman Christianity. It's not biblical Christianity. I would say the Lateran Palace's connection with the Roman emperors is marked by its transformation into a center of Roman Christianity, authority under Constantine the Great. And I like to reevaluate and re-talk about that. It was under the authority of Constantine the Great. We don't do church and state anymore these days, do we? It reflects the deep historical ties between the Roman Empire and the Christian Church, as well as the evolving role of the papacy in the centuries that followed. Now, what I'd like to talk about is who were the Laterini, or Laterani. This will be fun, right? Because it's not going to take me too long. If you do your research, this is what you're going to find. The Laterani, or the Laterani family, were a prominent Roman patrician family. Now, they were a prominent Roman patrician family in ancient Rome. That means something. Their name is most notably associated with the Lateran property, which, as we've already discussed, became significant in early Roman Christianity. That's a lot of stuff. Let's talk about Roman patrician families. What does that mean? It means social status, property, and legacy. That's what it means. And the Laterani were part of the Roman aristocracy, a patrician family with considerable influence in Roman society. As members of the upper class, they held significant social and political power, but we have not much to go on for records. We have a lot of other records, a lot of other Roman families. This Laterani owned a large villa or estate on the Caelian Hill in Rome, which became the famous site of the Lateran Palace and the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Who was the Laterini? You have to ask yourself at that point, very, very odd. Very odd that we don't have a lot to go on, do we? I'm going to talk about Roman patrician families in a moment, but let's talk about the property, Lateran property. I want to talk about it again. During the reign of Emperor Constantine the Great. Not before, not after. Very key. Very key. It's kind of like the mafia. When you have a front, then you have a store. This is the front store, but what's going on behind the scenes a little bit different. And that's what happens. Church seems to have been running by donation by very wealthy, elite, rich people. That's what backed them. It is said that the donation of the Lateran estate by Constantine was a significant event in the history of Christianity, symbolizing the bridge of the Roman Empire, paganism, and Roman Christianity. The Lateran Palace became the residence of the popes from the Lateran family that nobody knows of, and the Basilica became the Cathedral of Rome. Now, although the Lateran family itself is well documented compared to other Roman families, go search them. I tell you, I beg of you, I plead of you, go search them out. You're not going to find as much as you think. I took this from this here. This little, what I'm reading here, took from a Catholic site. It's well documented compared to other Roman families. That's a lie. Their estate's transformation into a major center of the Christian church has had a lasting impact. The Lateran Basilica and the Lateran Palace became central to the history of the Catholic Church and continue to be important landmarks. I'm going to tell you right now, do the research. I always tell people do the research. Correct me when I'm wrong. Correct me when you find hard evidence. You won't find it. Not for that. All right, I want to talk about Roman patrician families. You want well-documented Roman patrician families? Let's talk about it. And in ancient Rome, a patrician family was a member, we talked about this briefly, of the upper class of Roman society, distinguished by its noble lineage and political influence. So there's a lineage. It's a long line. Long line. Here's an overview of what it means to be a patrician family in ancient Rome. Noble status. Let's talk about that. The term patrician refers to the class of Roman citizens who were originally considered the elite. Aristocratic families of Rome. These patricians claimed descent from the founding families of Rome and were traditionally privileged in political and religious affairs, but you can't track that Lateran family. What about the social hierarchy? The patricians were part of a social hierarchy that distinguished them from the common people, the plebeians. This distinction was initially based on ancestry and the historical role of these families in the early republic. Again, you have no history of the Laterini, the Laterans, whatever you want to call that family. Smoke and mirrors, subterfuge, bait and switch, or just a straight lie. What about their political and social roles? What about political power? Patricians held significant political power in the early Roman Republic. They were eligible to hold high public offices, such as consul, senator, and pontifex maximus, chief priest. Uh-oh. Think about that for a moment. Where do you think the priest comes from in the Roman Catholic Church? It is among the Roman Empire system, the Roman Republican system. It's all it ever was. It always went sideways. It never went away. The patrician class had a dominant role in the Roman Senate and other governing institutions that created the Roman Catholic Church or kept it rolling. Religious influence. Patricians were often involved in the religious and ceremonial life of Rome. They held important priestly roles and were responsible for various religious rituals and rites. Well, look at that. So if you believe church and state should be separate, you definitely should not be Roman Catholic, that is for sure. Because they are not separate. They are one and the same in the Roman Republic of that time. The Roman Empire, the emperors, all of them, they're the same. What about their wealth and ownership of land? Many patrician families were wealthy and owned extensive lands. Their wealth and land ownership reinforced the social and political status. The Roman Catholic Church was perfect for them. They have religious rights over you and influence. They have the wealth. They have the land. They are in charge, and they will kill all of you little people who come across them. The Crusades. In the early Republic, patricians were the only ones who could hold significant public office. Well, how about that? I guess it's now we the people, huh? This led to tensions between the patrician and plebeian classes. Oh, look at that. Much like today. Isn't that funny? Nothing new under the sun, is it? As always, as throughout that time, plebeians sought greater rights and representation. They never got it, never will. Just like we are today, same thing. How long do you believe in your government? But over time, conflicts between patricians and plebeians led to social reforms. They did. But they really just gave plebeian laws and were allowed to force the law and allow plebeians to hold some high offices. But they had to still answer to certain people. They were still bought off. By the late Republic and into the Empire, the distinctions between patricians and plebeians became less pronounced. Because the patricians and plebeians became the same. The plebeians now were not the real plebeians, but the fake plebeians were now turned into patricians. Because the patricians retained a degree of prestige and influence still. They morphed. And the role of patrician families evolved, with many integrating into the broader Roman elite and political classes. So I was going to talk about patrician families. I'm going to wrap it up with that too. There were obviously several prominent patrician families that played significant roles in Roman history. I'm going to give you three. I do plead with you to take the time to go into all three. The Julius family, the Julii, including Gaius Julius Caesar. They were a notable patrician family. Julius Caesar's rise to power marked a key moment in the transition from republic to empire. Do I have to give you the history of Julius Caesar? We know how that went. Cornelia family. The Cornelia were influencing the Republic, producing several notable politicians and military leaders. We have a long list. The Amelia family. The Amelia were another important patrician family known for their political and military contribution. Those three families have a very long lineage. Why? Because they're a patrician family. Where's Lateran? I don't think they're who you think they are. People get smokescreened and lied to, and that is your Roman Catholic Church. The patrician class's influence on Roman politics, law, and religion was profound, and it shaped the development of Roman institutions as well as the Roman Catholic Church. Let me just summarize this, and we'll be done. A Roman patrician family was part of the aristocratic elite of ancient Rome, holding significant political, social, and religious influence. Their status was based on noble lineage, and they played crucial roles in the governance and culture of Rome. So the Lateran Palace is the Roman Empire, which is the Roman Catholic Church. None of that is different. It's always been the same. If you're Roman Catholic, you're in a state church. Really. You always have been. You're in a really tough organization there. Oh, it's an organization, by the way. It's not the Church of God. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in this evening. I hope that was quick and to the point. I tried to read or digest that as much as I could. And with that, I say God bless and have a beautiful evening. Good night.